Hello friends, how's it going? My name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing another reading vlog where I read some highly anticipated books. And in this reading vlog, I'm so excited because I'm reading 4 different books in 4 different genres. I have a non-fiction book that I'm incredibly excited about. I also have a thriller, I have a horror book, and I have a romance. And so there really is, something for everyone happening in this vlog. But before we do jump into today's vlog, I just wanted to thank today's video sponsor, which is Surfshark. So Surfshark is a VPN, and if you're wondering what a VPN is, it's something that keeps you safe and private by covering up everything that you do online. So when your device connects to the internet, all the information is encrypted so that anyone who tries to snoop on you while you're online won't be able to see what you're doing, and your location is also hidden. A VPN will let you virtually travel the world with just the tap of a finger. So for example, if you live in Spain, you can connect to a Canadian server and you can access the biggest movie catalog on Netflix. And this works with other streaming services as well. What's really nice too about this is that if you're traveling internationally and you're away from your home country, you can very easily connect back to your home country with your VPN, and so you don't have to miss out on your streaming services that you're used to while you're traveling abroad. I think internet safety is such an important thing now more than ever, and I also think it is so cool to be able to access and check out other countries and their streaming services, because I didn't realize how many other countries had different movies and TV shows available on the same streaming services, and now my watch list has doubled in size because of it. Surfshark will not only help you stay safe while using public Wi-Fi, but you can send and receive files securely, you can get the best deals while online shopping, and you can even access your bank safely while you're on public Wi-Fi. There are also other helpful add-ons that you can get, like Surfshark Antivirus, which will help to keep your device virus-free, and you'll also get real-time protection. And there's also no risk to trying Surfshark because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee, which is also really nice. So you can go ahead and use the link down below, or you can use my code gabbyreads for an exclusive discount plus 3 extra months free when you go to surfshark.deals/gabbyreads. Definitely be sure to check out that link in my description, and thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. And now you might be wondering, which books am I planning to read for this reading vlog? So the romance book that I'm going to be reading for this reading vlog is Business or Pleasure, which is the new Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is the same author as the X Talk, and so this is one of my most highly anticipated romance books of the year. I could not be more excited to read this. The thriller that I'm going to be reading for this video is The Quiet Tenant, which this is one that I was hoping to get to during Summerween, but I never got around to it, so I'm so excited to finally have the time to get to it in this vlog. And this is a thriller that I've been hearing some really great things about, and all that I know about it is that it follows the story of a serial killer, but we follow from the point of view of 3 different women who are in his life. And then the horror book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog is going to be Maeve Fly. This is one that I got the audiobook checked out from my library, and I've been hearing some pretty good things about this one. It's a newer release, and I've heard that it's compared to American Psycho, so we will have to see. And then the non-fiction book that I'm going to be reading for this video is the BTS book Beyond the Story. This is a book that I've been highly anticipating because I'm a huge fan of BTS, and this is a book they recently just came out with for their 10-year anniversary. So I'm going to be starting with this one for the reading vlog. I will have timestamps linked down below if you would like to jump around at all in this vlog, because I know not every single one of these books is going to be for everyone.
What's up with it? Do it cause I love it and I stuck with it. We ain't with the subbing in the cut with it. Please none of the talks, I heard enough of it. Like, what you gonna do? Where you at? Who you with? You ain't really about this, don't talk about it. Really on the move, on the map, never slip. Keep your hands to your lips, don't talk about it. Real eyes, real lies, real lives all the time. Stand on it, if we said it, we don't walk around it. Loose lips, sink ships, red cup, blue strips, new phone, who this? No, we don't allow it.
How's it going? What's up? I meant to update you sooner because now it's already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but I have been reading The Quiet Tenant, and this is a thriller and like mystery thriller that I've been really curious about. I was doing some Patreon reading sprints earlier today with Katie. I finally got to sprint with Katie again. I feel like it's been so freaking long since the last time that we did sprints together, but I got 136 pages in while I was on reading sprints with all of the friends, and oh my god, so far this book has been so interesting. interesting. Like, I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx it, but it's been giving me 5-star energy so far. Like, I'm just really into it. The thing that intrigued me the most about this book is the fact that we're going to be following the story of this man who's like a serial killer. But what's cool is that we're following from the perspective of, you know, it says it's narrated by those closest to him, his 13-year-old daughter, his girlfriend, and the one victim he has spared. And so much like one of my favorite books, you might recall that last year, one of my favorite books that I read last year was Notes on an Execution. In that story, it's also like the story of a serial killer, but the story's narrated by like the women that he's closest to in his life. And so this book definitely has similar vibes of Notes on an Execution. I think this book, it also reminds me of that book just because it's so gorgeously written. Like, I'm just really connecting with the writing in this, and I love not only the writing just in general, but there's also some really great writing when it comes to like feminist themes or like feminine moments that I just, like, they're so well written and beautiful. But something that's really cool about this book that's really different from Notes on an Execution is that in the first chapter, we're following from the perspective of the woman in the shed. And that's like all we get about her. Like, we don't know her name. We don't know really much more than that. It's just the woman in the shed. And then it's cool because her perspective is written in this like second person. Like, it'll say, you slide up your jeans and you do this, but it's like, when she's saying you, she's talking about like herself and her body. I don't know, I really like the way that these chapters are written. And then in alternate chapters, we get the perspective of this waitress named Emily. She's like a waitress in a bar that this man goes to. His name is Aiden. We get her point of view as she's kind of like starting to catch feelings for him, or she's like starting to think that, oh, he's so attractive and he's so, you know, he's a dad and he has this daughter and he's a single father, and, you know, she's like starting to catch feelings for this man. And so it's really interesting going back and forth between the two perspectives because, you know, in one perspective, it's like the woman in the shed who has been being held captive by him for 5 years now, and her perspective is like obviously showing like the worst of him, right? Like, it's like his awful like dark side. But then in the alternate chapters, when we're following this girl Emily, she's like seeing all these like positive things about him and how like he's just the best like handyman in the town and everybody has a good story about him and he's such a fucking good guy. And so it's been really interesting to go back and forth between those two points of views. And then also we do eventually start to get the perspective from his 13-year-old daughter, but that doesn't happen until a little bit later on. But something that's also cool is that we also do get some chapter perspectives from his victims. So like one chapter will be called Number 1, and then we'll just get like a short description of like the first victim that he ever killed, and then we'll get a chapter that's like Number 2, and it'll be like a really short chapter about like his victims and like these women that he's killed in the past. And those chapters are also really interesting and just really well written. They're written in this almost like really anonymous way where it's like you're not really supposed to know those women and their stories. It's more about him. And I feel like that in itself, right, is kind of saying something about how we as a society view serial killers and their victims, how like the women just become so anonymous and like nobody fucking cares, but we put all of our attention onto this man who's the serial killer and like the big bad guy. And why is it that we are that way, you know, as a society? Like, we don't care about the women when we should be caring about the victims. I just love some of the more kind of like feminist writing in this too as well, because there's a scene, this is only 20 chapters in and it's not spoilery, but I just wanted to give you an example of like the writing and like why I'm loving it so much. The woman that lives in the shed, she'll be asking like, who is your daughter? Like, what's her name? And he'll be like, why do you care? Like, why do you want to know my daughter's name? And she says, you wouldn't get it. It's embedded in you once you've been a girl. You pass them on the street, you hear their laughs, you feel their pain. You want to lift them into your arms and carry them over to the end point, sparing their feet from the thorns that drew blood from your own. Every girl in the world is a little bit me, and every girl in this world is a little bit mine, even yours, even the one that's half you. I care because I need the part of you that made her. You would never kill your own daughter, would you? Oh, is that not so stunning and so heartfelt? Like, oh my god. I'm loving the writing in this so much, and I don't want to jinx it because I know I'm still early on in this book, but I do feel like this is giving 5-star vibes. Like, I can see myself easily giving this 5 stars, and I can see this becoming a new favorite. I think something that is so different about this book, at least in comparison to Notes on an Execution, is that we're not only following the point of view of a serial killer, or like, we're not following the story of a serial killer, but I think the thing that makes this one so unique is because we're following from the perspective of a woman who's been being held captive by this serial killer for a number of years now. So like, not only does the story kind of remind me of, you know, Notes on an Execution, but it also does kind of remind me of Room in a way. It kind of reminds me of The Butterfly Garden. Like, it's definitely giving some of those vibes as well. So I am very intrigued and very much enjoying this, and I'm probably gonna eat some dinner now and then maybe continue on with reading this a little bit later tonight. Hello, it's almost 10 o'clock at night. Just finished listening to The Quiet Tenant. Holy fuck, this book just hit. This book hit me. I'm gonna be really annoying right now because I don't think this book was the perfect 5-star for me, but I do think I'm probably gonna give this book like 4.5 stars. Holy shit, dude, that ending was so goddamn beautiful and so well written and just like, oh, it's one of those endings that just like gives you chills all over your body and just makes you feel so good about the world again, kind of. I think the only reason I don't want to give this like a full 5 stars is because there was a point in the middle of this book, or like towards that second half of the book, where I just felt like things were starting to move a little bit slowly, or like, I don't know, like the pacing just got a little bit slow for me, or like at least some of the moments that were happening started to feel a little bit repetitive, and I was just kind of like ready for the story to move on. Because there was just a good chunk where I was just like a little bit bored, you know? It's not that the writing ever got bad necessarily, because the writing stayed really gorgeous throughout the whole book, but it just got a little bit repetitive and I was ready for, you know, things to be happening more in the story. Ugh, sorry, I had to take a quick pause because there was some sirens out the window. It's so crazy. I feel like today there's been at least like 3 or 4 separate times that I've been hearing sirens going down this back road. Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. But anyways, back to this. I think also something about this book that kind of bothered me, that I know it probably shouldn't bother me because I feel like the author's trying to make a point here with this maybe, is that this girl, Emily, at times, she just read a little bit naive to me, or like, you know, this man would be giving her so many red flags and she would just be like, well, maybe that's just the way he is, and just kind of like trying to explain or like make excuses for him. And you know, Emily is the character who's like the waitress at the bar who he's kind of like starting to form a relationship with throughout this book, you know, and we do get a lot of her perspective because like every other chapter is from her point of view. And I get that maybe the author's trying to make a point, like just because a girl is young and naive doesn't mean she should be like looked down upon, like, you know, because once people are like, how did you not know that you were like with a serial killer, or like people tend to put more of the blame on her than they do on him, you know? And so I get that the author's trying to make a point and they're trying to show like it shouldn't matter. I think like that's what they're trying to say, like it shouldn't matter how naive a girl is behaving because none of the blame should be placed on her. It's all on him. Like he's the one who's the fucking serial killer, you know? So I do think that I get what the author was trying to do with her character, but I still feel like at times she just drove me a little bit nuts with some of her like naive comments, and also more so like especially towards the end when things were really starting to get a little bit shady and she was like, well, maybe it's just that, like, no honey, I'm sorry, open your eyes, like, do you see what's in front of you? God, I think the story was just so gorgeously written. I think that's my biggest takeaway from this book, is I'm always gonna remember how beautifully this book was written. I also think there are so many great like moments, like feminist kind of moments, or moments where it's like girls protecting other girls, or like, you know, girls caring for each other. That was just so beautiful to see. And I loved this book. You know, I do think this, like I was saying earlier, I think this book is like a perfect recommendation for if you enjoyed Notes on an Execution or Room. I have started on my next read, which is Business or Pleasure. It's so funny. So in this story, we're following this girl named Chandler, who is a ghostwriter. Like that is essentially her job, which is really cool and really funny to read about, to be honest. And I thought this book started off so freaking funny because she starts off with this one night stand with this guy, Drew, and she doesn't know how to tell him that like the sex is just like absolutely terrible. Like it just doesn't work for her. She ends up like leaving after he falls asleep. Like she's just not satisfied by any of that. But then it's funny because, you know, for her next ghostwriting gig, she gets this job for this guy who's an actor named Finn Walsh. And he was like well known on this TV show called The Nocturnals. That was like a werewolf type of TV show. And he's, you know, going to be publishing his first ever memoir, but they're looking for a ghostwriter to like help him write the book. And of course, you know, this man, Finn, is the guy that she had the one night stand with at the beginning, which I honestly think is just so entertaining. Like, turns into a story kind of situation where she's gonna be teaching him and giving him some tips in the bedroom. It's definitely reminding me a little bit of the Kiss Quotient in that sense, because it has kind of like a similar premise where like she's gonna be teaching him in the bedroom, but it's like reverse of the gender roles kind of thing. But I don't know, so far it's really cute. I forgot that this one takes place in Seattle. I don't know why I forget that about all of Rachel Lynn Solomon's books usually take place in Seattle. And this one's also fun because he's living in LA as like an actor, and they're like meeting up in Portland at this point in time. So like there's a lot of West Coast talk happening in this book, which is really fun, you know, because I'm originally from California and now I'm living in Washington. So I like reading about California and Oregon and Washington. I don't know, I think so far this main character is a bit relatable, you know, because of her talk about her anxieties, and then she also talks about how she has like some parents who are usually a little bit older than the rest of her friends, and like I definitely relate to that as well. I like that he's, you know, an actor in this book, but he's also like, she's not afraid to like put him in his place when it comes to being like, yeah, you kind of suck in bed, and that whole conversation was just kind of hilarious, and I like love the way that he reacted to that conversation. I just thought it was great. So anyways, I'm really enjoying this one so far. It's a Saturday afternoon right now, and my freaking Taylor Swift concert is happening tomorrow. So I just finished washing my hair. The other day I got my nails done with my mom and my sister for the concert because I'm wearing Reputation vibes. And so right now me and my sister are going to go and run to the Dollar Tree because we wanted to get like Sharpies and glitters so we can do the like 13 on our hands tomorrow. And then I'm probably also going to eat some dinner later. I might try to finish this up. I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to finish this today, but I definitely want to read a little bit more of this later today.
Waking up in my bed, you're still stuck in my head. I'm not even hungover. I wanna call your phone, tell you what you did wrong, then ask you to come over. Not very good with decisions, know what's right, but I don't listen. I don't, and I complain and dismiss it.
Hello, it has been a couple of days since the last time that I updated this vlog, because if you saw from those last clips, I have gone to this Taylor Swift concert and I came back. I'm wearing the merch, and it was absolutely the night of my life and it was incredible. But during that time, I have completely forgotten to update you on my progress on business or pleasure. On that day, I had gotten about 70% of the way through the book, so I did read the majority of it all in that one day, and then I only had about 30% left of the audiobook. So today is the day after the Taylor Swift concert. It's Monday right now, and I was able to finish that final 30%. And this book was really freaking cute. I think I want to give this one around like a 4-star. And the only reason why I hesitate to want to give this one like a full 5 stars is just because I don't think I loved this one as much as I loved the X Talk, but this one was really cute. I think part of my issue with this book is things that are kind of like stupid, but like in between every single chapter of this book, we'll get something that's kind of like a media post or like a journal entry or like an article or like something, or like even a script, like a screenplay moment from the TV show that this guy is on. And I honestly just thought these were a little bit distracting from the story and like really not needed. And some of them were kind of long. Like most of them were pretty short, but some of them were kind of long to the point where I was like, skip on the audiobook, because I was like, this adds nothing to the story. Especially like these, when it's just like Twitter and then it's like a bunch of people like tweeting about the show. I'm like, dude, I don't care. And so that was like one of my only nitpicks with the story. And then of course, you know, towards the end of this book, we get to the dreaded kind of like third act conflict that can really like make or break a romance book for me. And this third act conflict was just fine. I just found myself like wanting to get through it because I was just like, okay, like I get where they're both coming from, but also like it is not that serious and it is not that deep. And so I was just like, I don't know, I was just not that invested in the conflict, I guess, which is another reason why I hesitate to want to give this 5 stars. But I still really enjoyed my time reading this. I think the things that I'm going to remember most about this book is that I love books that follow writers. I know I mentioned this probably in my last clip, but oh my god, there's something about reading about a writer. I just really love reading about someone who does writing for a career. I also do love, you know, these characters had really great chemistry, and they also, like, I rarely ever compliment this in romance books, but I feel like the sex scenes in this book were written very well, and they were like very steamy. I know with a book that looks like this, Business or Pleasure, you might be thinking because it has like a cute little cover that it's like not that steamy, but I do think this one got pretty steamy, especially in comparison to the last books that Rachel Lynn Solomon has come out with. Like, I don't know if I'm just not remembering them fully, but I don't think that they were nearly as steamy as this one got. I was like, whoa, okay. Like, this definitely reminded me quite a bit of the Kiss Quotient because of the whole, like, I'm gonna be teaching them tips in the bedroom kind of thing. It also kind of reminded me of The Roommate, which was one of my favorite romance books that I read a few years ago now. I don't know why, I think it just reminded me of that because that book also had like two characters that were like teaching each other things sexually, so apparently I just really do enjoy that in my romance books. I like people giving each other tips in the bedroom. I think it's very entertaining to read about. I also did want to mention how I love how there's so many different travel scenes with these characters because, you know, this book does mostly take place in Seattle, Washington, which is really cool, you know, because hello, I live in Washington and that's really awesome. But I also loved too how many cities they got to go to in this book. Like, there's scenes that take place in like Portland, Oregon, Phoenix, Arizona, even like New York City had its time, like Denver, Colorado. Like, there was just so many fun cities to read about in this book, and it really just like made me want to travel, you know? I just love the way that this author writes her romances. Like, she always writes characters that have such good chemistry. Like, that's something I know I can always rely on with her books. And so yeah, that is very exciting. I'm so glad to have really loved another book from Rachel Lynn Solomon. Let's go! Okay, hello! It has been about 24 hours since the last time that I updated you, and I have started on my next read, which is Maeve Fly. I decided to read this one next because I actually got the audiobook checked out from my library, so I've been listening to this on audio pretty much all morning. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon right now. I've had a pretty busy day today. Me and my sister went grocery shopping. We went to Winco. We did the whole thing this morning. It took most of the morning, and then in the afternoon I was just doing a lot of different like laptop work, you know, like I was planning content for August for Patreon and then like making a bunch of different calendar things and, you know, just all kinds of stuff. And this one, you know, I'm pretty much jumping into this book without knowing anything about it. Like, I've just heard from a few friends that it was really interesting, that it's this like good horror book and that we're following this female protagonist. I didn't realize that her name in this book is Maeve Fly. I was like, oh, that's like a cool name. And so we follow this character named Maeve Fly. It's very like stream of conscious kind of writing, like from her perspective, and it's really interesting because she plays a Disney princess basically at Disneyland. I mean, they don't say, okay, they can't say, I don't think they're allowed to say that it's like Disneyland, but she says she plays like a really well-known ice princess at the happiest place on earth in Anaheim, California. Like, you can make a few assumptions that she's talking about Disneyland, you know? And so I think she's playing Elsa, or she gets to like dress up as Elsa during the day, and then at night she does some questionable things in bars. She has this best friend named Kate who is also, she plays another one of the Disney princesses, and it's kind of funny because I don't understand though, because she'll say like Cinderella and Snow White, and she'll say which other princesses the other women are like dressing up as, but for some reason she can't say like I'm Elsa from Frozen. Like, she can't say that, I guess. I don't really understand why that is, but she has this best friend named Kate, and then her brother, Kate's brother, his name is Gideon. He's gonna be like coming back into town, and she's catching up with him, and he's kind of like getting involved in her life and maybe encouraging her to like make some questionable choices. You know, something that I thought was interesting was that on the Goodreads premise of this book, it says inspired by the pages of American Psycho, and it says step aside, Patrick Bateman, it's Maeve's turn with the knife. And I was like, oh shit, because, you know, when I started this book I was like, oh my gosh, this does have the kind of like typical narrator when you're reading from the point of view of someone who is just completely unhinged. Like, it was definitely reminding me of American Psycho. It was reminding me of Dexter a little bit. It was reminding me of like They Never Learn. Like, it definitely has that kind of writing where you just know that you're like in the mind of someone who's kind of like a psychopath, you know, like they're just kind of a little. And so it's been interesting so far, but something that I didn't realize was how dark and also like sexual this book was gonna be. It's been a little bit surprising to me so far because I'm like, oh shit, like, okay, that's really going there. And I don't know, I'm only 55% of the way through the audiobook right now. It's reading super quick actually, but yeah, I don't know, it's definitely a little bit more darker than I was anticipating. And I looked on Goodreads and there's so many people saying that this is an extreme horror book, and I'm like, oh fuck, oh no. It's also being categorized on Goodreads Goodreads under splatterpunk, and I'm like, oh fuck. Like, I don't know if this is gonna be my thing or not, dude, because I have pretty much had a history of feeling very like, ugh, about some extreme horror books. Like, there's only been a handful that I've enjoyed. The only one I can think of that I enjoyed is either Killing Stalking or like Gone to See the Riverman. Like, those are the only like extreme horror books that I think that I've enjoyed. But extreme horror can be very hit or miss for me because I can be such a little bitch about things. So I'm hoping it doesn't get like too intense for me. But now I'm kind of scared for the second half. And you know, I see so many too of my friends on Goodreads saying that the first half was kind of like reading like a dark comedy and it was really entertaining. And I've been feeling like that so far. Like, I do think the narration style, it feels familiar because it does remind me of that like Dexter kind of like narration where it's just like stream of consciousness and you're just kind of, you know, reading about someone who's a little bit, you know, unhinged. I really do love how obsessed Maeve is with like Halloween. Like, she's always talking about Halloween and how she just like loves the spooky vibes. So like, I'm here for that. But I've heard from so many friends on like Goodreads that the second half of this book is just absolutely unhinged and like it gets way more gory and graphic and violent. And so I'm just like, oh my god, where is this gonna go? So I'm kind of scared for this second half, but you know, so far it's going well. I don't know, I'm enjoying it. It's not like my favorite thing ever, but I'm having a mostly good time right now. We got so many groceries today, so I think we might make some al pastor tacos because I got some fresh cilantro and onions and I want to do the whole thing. And so hopefully that'll be happening soon. I'm going to continue some, you know, work that I have to do on my laptop, and I'm just going to continue listening to this on audio. Hello, it has been a couple of hours. It's about 7:30 at night right now. We made a really nice dinner with some, you know, al pastor tacos, and then my sister started making homemade Rice Krispies, which was also very exciting. But I did end up finishing listening to Maeve Fly. After dinner, I was like doing the dishes, so I was just like listening to the audiobook, and then I took a shower and washed my hair because it was desperately needed. This audiobook was something. I feel like with this review right now, you should really just take this with a grain of salt because I don't think I was the intended audience for this book because, like I said, extreme horror is just really not my favorite genre. I think I've really figured out why I don't like extreme horror and specifically what about extreme horror doesn't work for me, because I don't like reading about torture. I hate reading about somebody being tortured by another human. It is just not my favorite thing to read. And I know you're probably like, then why do you like Dexter or American Psycho or whatever? Like, those things don't feel nearly as graphic and gory as some of these extreme horror books do. And I'm talking like, oh god, like there are scenes with like a curling iron. There were scenes with like a drumstick. Like, you could just imagine, okay? You could just imagine the things that were happening in this book, and it was absolutely just disgusting and horrifying to listen to. There was quite a few scenes where I was getting a little bit squeamish, like I'm not gonna lie, and I was like, nope, 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 skip, skip, skip. There were definitely a few scenes that just really disturbed me, but it's like, as they should, right? I mean, this is an extreme horror book. It did what it came to do. I just don't know if I really ended up loving like where the story ended up going. Like, I don't know, it's just with this book I wasn't super invested plot-wise either. Like, I thought Maeve was an interesting enough character to be following, and I liked kind of following like her subconscious and kind of like her descent into madness. I thought was really interesting. But like, otherwise, I don't know, I feel like overall I'm probably gonna give this book like 3 stars, and I feel like that's being pretty generous because I just didn't care for it too much. But I can acknowledge that this book was just not for me, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a bad book. I do think the comparison to American Psycho does feel pretty accurate, but at the same time, you know, I've only seen the American Psycho movie. I have not read the book, and I heard that the book is just absolutely gruesome and brutal, and so I don't know, maybe this is more comparable to the American Psycho book. Like, I don't know, but I think that's what it really comes down to for me with these extreme horror books, is that so often the extreme part of the horror is people torturing each other, and that's just not a subgenre of horror that I love. Like, I just hate reading about people getting tortured. Like, there's nothing fun about it for me. It just makes me squeamish. It makes me like, ugh. And especially like in this kind of situation in this book where she's getting off on people being tortured, and it's like a sexual thing, you know, and like that also just like really disturbs me to my core, but in a way that it's like it's not something that I want to read about. So like, I don't know, that's why I'm like, just take my review with a grain of salt, because I don't think that I'm the target audience for this book, and I should really like do more research honestly sometimes before I pick up a horror book, because sometimes it'll just get like recommended to me like, oh my god, this horror book, you should check it out, and I don't realize that it's like a splatterpunk or like an extreme horror kind of book. Like I just know that those are not my kind of books, so definitely need to be more aware of the genre of horror when I'm picking up a horror book. But you know, you live and you learn. So anyways, I would love to know though, if you have read Maeve Fly, I would love to know what you think of it.
Yeah, I'm feeling anxious, baby, 안아줘. 바라카 소리 나, my baby, I don't wanna know. 우리의 미래 모래처럼 몰라 where it goes. 난 아직 준비 안 됐어, 나 알려줘. I'm feeling anxious lately, I don't know. 피곤하기도 하고, baby, think I gotta go. 난 이제 너만 생각하기 싫어, take it slow. 난 아직 준비 안 됐어, yeah, 나 알려줘.
Okay, hi, it is a Sunday afternoon and I wanted to give you the first update of this vlog because I have started on Beyond the Story. This book is kind of interesting the way that it's written, because it's written in this like third person style where it's just talking about BTS and their careers, and then in between it's like inserted with like quotes from them about that time period of their lives and different things like that. So it's written in a really cool way. It's a very like journalistic approach to their careers where we're just getting like information about, you know, their early days, and then in between the information we'll get inserts of, you know, quotes from each one of the members. And so I'm really liking the way that this is being written so far, and I do have the audiobook that I downloaded from Libro because I was like, I don't know why, I think it'd be fun to like listen to this on audio as well. From what I can hear, I think they're using two different vocal actors, and they're using one of the vocal actors is just doing the like narration bits of the book, but then when it comes time for the like quotes from BTS, they have a different voice actor for those. So it's kind of cool to like hear a separate voice or like a second voice that's the voice of BTS in this narration of the audiobook. But so far this has just been, I mean, I've only read the first chapter so far, which was about like 50 pages, and I've already annotated and like made so many notes in here. I mean, I am a fairly new BTS fan, you know, I just became an ARMY or a BTS fan last year in March of 2020. So I've been a, you know, huge fan of them for about a year and a half now. So I do know some of their story. I've watched so many videos of like, you know, fans talking about what it was like in their early days as a group. And I've just seen so many interviews, and, you know, I feel like I do have a pretty good understanding of most of their debut time, but it is different to, you know, hear about it from them and to really like get to know about their experiences. I feel like as a newer fan, this is just so cool to get to kind of re-experience these 10 years that they've had together as a group. And what I did with my sister's help, I made a cute little like tab chart because I have all of these different tabs that I was wanting to use for this. And so I thought it would be really fun if I did a different color for like each member, and then I can like tab cute moments with like that specific member that I want to remember. And then I also ended up making 3 other tabs because I had to make a tab for rap line moments specifically because I am a rap line girly. I mean, my bias line is Yoongi, Namjoon, and J-Hope. So like, and so I am just a rap line girl at heart, and already in that first chapter there were so many cute little like rap line moments of them like, you know, teaching the rest of the group how to rap, and there were so many great moments that I was like, I need a freaking tab just for my rap line heart. And so we have that. I also did make a separate tab that's like for the sad moments because I have a feeling going into chapter 2 we're gonna get a lot of sad moments. And then I also made this little purple tab for like proud of them moments or like ARMY like cute fan stuff because I just want a purple tab for that. I always knew that they were, you know, very hardworking people and that they worked hard to get where they are today, but it's a completely different thing to like read about their story and hear about it in their own words. And some of the things that they went through in the beginning of their careers were just really hard and really unimaginable because, you know, training as a K-pop group in South Korea is just like a different level. Like in South Korea, they're just on a different level when it comes to, you know, their stars and their celebrities and all of the training that they have to undergo in order to even debut. And so that's why I think this book is especially interesting. It's very educational about all of of the work and the effort that goes into debuting in the first place. Because if you didn't know, I mean, some of these guys in BTS, like all of Rapline, the 3 members of Rapline, they were training for 3 years before they debuted with BTS as a group. And so I can't even imagine training for something for 3 years before you even get to be on a stage in front of people, you know, like that is a long time to put in so much work and so much effort. And I think my Rapline loving heart is just especially excited to read this and knowing, like getting to see the behind the scenes of how much work Rapline especially puts into this group. And my sister is gonna start making dinner right now. We're actually making burgers tonight. I'm gonna go help her out in a minute. And so my literal plans for tonight are burgers and then read this BTS book and cry.
Yeah, I'll be honest, 요준이 생각에만 나 It's the sun to say that I've been feeling alive 난 아니야 Staying up and out of the chance 네가 필요 없다고 그 잔인한 거짓말 Now I'm sprung, running through my head 네 옆에 말해줘 시간 없다고 할 때가 가라고 You ain't even gotta tell me twice So you fancy, funny how you in my life 그래 이젠 궁금하지 않아 우리 미래 Think about her, strip down 혼내 easy Driving on the wrong side down on the freeway Frequent trips and frequently 기대 우리 걷던 점점 더 힘이 Think about our problems all 점점 커져 친구 사이로 I know I told you we could be there 1, 2, 3 I ain't never offended if you left like that 있으면 우리 싸울 텐데 Staying up at night 있어 보이기에 I don't really miss you Talking like we're friends so 지난 척해 Like a game But you not even play 연락하지 마 이름 보지 않게 I don't really need you All I need is you Yeah All I need is you All I need is you, yeah, like all I need is you. Baby, we can rendezvous. Baby, all I need is you. Like all I need is you. Baby, all I need is you, yeah.
Okay, hello, it's almost 10 o'clock at night and I've just been laying in bed. I put on my August D tour shirt because it felt right. And I've just been laying here listening and reading this book all night. I actually got about 50% of the way through it and I'm now on chapter 5. This whole book, by the way, is only 7 chapters long. They show all the different chapters on the back. So I'm already on chapter 5. I've already gotten down to the last 3 chapters. Oh my god, this book has been it's just been so beautiful. I've been having the time of my life annotating this and just marking it up. And chapters 2 and 3 were absolutely brutal to read. Oh my god. It really just gets into, you know, the very specific details of like how challenging and how difficult it was for them at the beginning of their career. I mean, for their first 4 albums, they just really didn't have a lot of success. It was kind of like one album would do well and then the next album would not, and then the next album did okay, and then the next album didn't, and it was just a lot of ups and downs at the beginning of their career, and it's just really sad to hear about it from their perspective, you know, because they would have so much love and passion going into something, and then when it didn't end up, you know, turning out the way that they thought it would, like how hard that was for them and their mental health, and just wondering if they can even continue to go forward with music. And the amount of hate that they got at their beginning of their careers, and even now to this day, like the amount of hate that they've gotten, it's just so hard to stomach. It's really hard to stomach. I wasn't expecting them to like directly talk about the Be Free incident, because if you didn't know, there was this rapper in Korea and his name was Be Free, and he literally had RM and Yoongi like on his little show and he humiliated them in public, and he basically like made fun of their name. And they even said in the book, they were like, we're not going to repeat the comments that he actually said because you can find it on the internet if you really want to. So I respect the fact that they addressed the situation and they talked about it without actually putting like in print the awful words that he said about them. But it was just really, I don't know, I was really surprised that they talked about that specifically. But at the same time, like I know that because of that incident, that's what inspired a lot of, you know, the rap line, especially like with their music, like that inspired their cypher songs, which are some of my favorite songs that they've ever come out with. But it was just so hard and sad to read about those things in this and just be like, ugh. And I had no idea about some of the other hate they received. Like, they said RM was named specifically in this other guy's like diss track. Like, what the fuck? I just, oh my god, there were a few things in those chapters that were just really hard to read about, and you know, all of them talking about how there were so many times where they just felt like they couldn't do this anymore and like their schedules were just way too intense. Like, I can't believe some of the way that their schedules were back in the day. Like, the way they would just talk about how they would just be going straight from practice and doing all of these things. Did these guys ever sleep? Like, what the fuck? I also did end up adding in a new color tab for anytime they talk about like lyrics or music, which I know is something that maybe should have been obvious to me and I should have had a tab straight from the beginning, but there was a specific moment when they were talking about a certain song called Moving On that I was like, oh my god, like these lyrics are so beautiful. And you know, because I'm still a new-ish BTS fan, there's still a lot of their music that I haven't fully like really listened to. Like, I've listened to almost all of their albums now at least once all the way through, but there's a few songs that I feel like I haven't given my full attention to, and Moving On is definitely one of those songs. Like, I had no idea that that song meant so much to Yoongi especially, and dude, I fucking cried. Okay, on page 135, if you know, you probably know, and because I'm a Yoongi bias, oh my god, that fucking hit me so hard. I was like, what the fuck? So apparently Moving On was like the amygdala of like early BTS, and I need to go back and give that song my full attention. I love too hearing more about the song I Need You and how that song really just like launched their whole career really, and like really had made them get so many new fans, and especially like the song I Need You and then Dope were like the two that really blew up a little bit later on. So it was just really cool to like hear more about how their lives were at that time. I feel like even more so while reading this, it's just so clear to me how much the members have such a respect for each other, and it's so freaking sweet. Like, so often, so many of their quotes when they're talking about certain times in their lives, they'll just be like saying how they relied on the other members to get through it, or they really looked up to the other members and have so much respect for each other. Even a quote from V where he says, I often cried because I felt guilty that I don't want to become a burden to BTS. I was worried that because of me, cracks would form in the heavy and stable wall called BTS. I didn't want to fall behind these perfect people. Like, what the fuck? Oh my god, it's so sweet. God, I love too how we learn a little bit more about like the rap line and their solo projects, you know, even though I would love a little bit more of that as a rap line girly. But I love getting the opportunity to hear a little bit more about Mono and how RM was creating Mono on the side during all of these BTS projects, and then also with like Yoongi and his solo projects as well. I'm probably gonna call it a night and go to bed now, but I do plan to finish this tomorrow and just be all in my feelings.
널 만나기 전 누군가를 위해 노래한 적 없어. 길어지는 대화 속 정신만 차린 입이 웃고 있어. 모두 말해 내게 꿈결에 분명 실망할 테니 수빈 무의미해 네 매력은 또 변화구를 던져. 가슈 그 누구보다 눈이 참 예뻐. Yeah you 그 누구보다 사랑스러워. Yeah you 찾아 헤매이던 내 반쪽. I feel so free. Oh my sweet baby. 널 만나기 전 난 일만 했지 workaholic lifestyle. 매일 지루했지 난 쳇바퀴 위에 성실한 햄스터. 너의 등장에 나 비로소는 더 다양한 세상의 색채. 언어로 인해 변해가. 가슈 그 누구보다 눈이 참 예뻐. Yeah you 그 누구보다 사랑스러워.
Hey, hello. It is like 3 o'clock the next day. I've just been listening to this and following along on audio pretty much all afternoon, and I just finished it. And like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I don't even have words. I am just so fucking proud of them. Really interesting, you know, to learn about how back in like 2018 is when they had their renewal period where they were gonna have to either like renew their contracts or potentially disband. And you know, I had heard a little bit about that time period of their lives, and I knew how hard it was for them to try and figure out if this is something they, you know, still wanted to continue doing. But gosh, it was just so incredible to like hear about it from them, like about how hard it was for them to decide, but also how they just really couldn't see themselves doing anything else. Also just loved hearing so much more about the insights into like the songwriting process and how like DNA ended up having to get completely like rewritten because they thought the hook wasn't very good and they completely changed it. I also, my heart just hurts so much for, you know, RM, like Namjoon, and hearing about how he struggled so much with like, you know, because he's like the only one in the group who speaks English, and as like the leader of their group, he's the one that's like expected to take on like the leader role when it comes to, you know, interviews in America, and how he was talking about how he really just like learned English due to like survival. Like he needed to learn English in order to be able to convey like what he was trying to say, and how he said it felt like he was having a mental breakdown because all the interviewers would have different accents and it was difficult to pick up what they were saying. If the meaning didn't come across properly, questions could arise that could cause problems for both Korea and America, because he was really like representing Korea a lot sometimes with his responses, and you know, he was worried that sometimes things could get mistranslated or that he wasn't conveying what he was trying to say properly. And like, gosh, I just can't even imagine the amount of pressure that he felt as the leader of the group. There was also so many beautiful moments that I learned about between like Jungkook and Jimin, and then even like Jimin and V, like learning more about like their friendships and like the hardships that they went through as friends. I don't know, I just thought it was so interesting to learn more about their friendships and how they've come to be as close as they are. I also just really enjoyed reading this because I feel like this is one of those beautiful and rare success stories that you read about, where it's like the underdogs who never really thought much of themselves were able to like do the impossible and make it big. And there's just something so magical about reading this right now, and you know, like knowing how famous and successful BTS is, but like reading this and like learning more about their story and how hard it was for them at the beginning. It's just so inspiring. I also just loved getting more insight into, you know, hearing about how some of my favorite songs came to be, you know, and like how they went about like writing the lyrics and like what really inspired those songs. Like some of them I had no idea what certain songs were really inspired by or like written about, and I just thought it was so interesting to get to learn about it. Also, oh my gosh, that whole section at the end talking about like Chris Martin of Coldplay and how freaking cool he is, and how he like Chris Martin really wanted to collaborate with them on the song My Universe, and like that whole bit about all of Chris Martin's efforts to like make this song with them. Like, God, Chris Martin is just such a freaking cool person, and I just love him so much. It was also really cool too at the end of this book because, you know, I became a BTS fan in like around March of 2022, and it was really cool because at the end of this book they talk about their Grammy performance that was, you know, in 2022, and how they did the song Butter, and how it was really cute because during that performance it was this really like elaborate big performance where they were kind of like spies, and it was this like whole thing that was set up really fun. I was actually a fan during that time, and like I remember sitting on my couch like screaming over their Grammy performance. It was just so cool to actually read about something that I had been a fan during that time, and like to read about their, you know, Permission to Dance concerts that were in Vegas. Like it just feels so cool that now I've been a fan for a small little part of their history. Yeah, this was just so insightful. It was so inspiring. I feel like this story of BTS really begins and ends with J-Hope. Like I love the way that this book was written, and how at the beginning of the book it's talking about, you know, J-Hope is kind of the first one to talk about how he was so scared and it was Christmas Eve and the streets were full of people and he couldn't find any joy because he was so nervous about this new experience back in 2010. And then how the book ends with another quote from J-Hope that was just like the softest thing ever. Like I just love that writing choice that this, you know, person who put this book together did with like starting the story of BTS with J-Hope and then ending the book with J-Hope. I just thought that was beautiful. I just love the respect they have for each other and for their fans. Like they are just really the most humble and beautiful, respectful people. They make me emotional. Anyways, I won't go on any longer because I I could go on all day. I would love to know what you think of any of the books that I read during this video. I feel like this video was very random and very chaotic and very all over the place, which I guess is usually pretty on brand for me these days, but I feel like this one was even more chaotic than usual. So thank you so much for watching, thank you for hanging out, and hopefully I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!